I always knew that death would be my final act of truth. The doctors gave me 6 months, which was 5 more than I needed to put everything in order. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer doesn't negotiate, and neither would I, not anymore. My children called me difficult. High maintenance. Dramatic. Too sensitive. Their father, my ex-husband Richard, had carefully cultivated that image of me over the 27 years since our divorce. And I had let him. Because fighting back would have meant exposing them to the monster he truly was, and what mother willingly destroys her children's image of their father? Even a father who had destroyed her. So I became the villain in their story. The mother who couldn't handle family life. Who was unstable. Who abandoned them. None of it was true. But truth is a luxury when you're trying to protect your children. Rebecca, my oldest at 34, barely speaks to me. 2 obligatory calls a year, my birthday and Christmas. She has her father's eyes and, unfortunately, his capacity for cold judgment. She became a corporate attorney, just like Richard, working at his firm. Daddy's perfect reflection. Michael, my 31-year-old middle child, maintains a polite distance. Monthly calls that never exceed 15 minutes. Surface-level conversations about the weather and his job as an accountant. He's the peacekeeper, always trying to find middle ground. He has my gentleness but his father's conflict avoidance. Then there's Sophia, my youngest at 28. The only one who visits me with any regularity, though even those visits are strained. She's an elementary school teacher with my creativity and compassion. She tries the hardest to understand me, but Richard's narrative runs too deep. When the oncologist confirmed what I already suspected, I felt an unexpected sense of freedom wash over me. The terminal diagnosis was terrifying, yes, but it also meant I could finally tell the truth without fear of consequences. What could Richard do to me now? What could anyone do? That afternoon, I drove to my attorney's office and set my plan in motion. Janet had been my friend since college, one of the few Richard hadn't managed to alienate during our marriage. She knew parts of my story but not all. No one knew all of it except me. "You sure about this, Elaine?" she asked after I explained what I wanted to do. "It's going to change everything for them." "I've spent 30 years protecting them from the truth," I said. "I'm done dying with his lies." The next day, I began the journals. 3 identical black leather-bound books with my children's names embossed in gold on the covers. Inside each, I wrote my testimony, everything I had protected them from. The physical abuse that began 3 months into our marriage when I questioned a credit card charge. The time he pushed me down the stairs when I was 7 months pregnant with Michael, then convinced the emergency room doctor I was clumsy. The constant psychological warfare. The isolation from family and friends. The financial control. The threats to take the children if I ever left. I included dates, details, photographs I had kept hidden in a safety deposit box. Hospital records. Police reports that never led to charges because of Richard's standing in the community and his friendship with the police chief. Testimonies from the few people who had witnessed his cruelty and were willing to go on record. And then I explained why I had finally left, not because I didn't love my children desperately, but because Richard had turned his attention to 10-year-old Rebecca one night. I'd walked in to see him standing in her doorway, watching her sleep with that look in his eyes I knew too well. I'd taken his car keys that night and driven the children to my sister's house 3 states away. I filed for divorce the next day. What I hadn't expected was Richard's vicious counter-strategy. He claimed I was mentally unstable, had witnesses testify to episodes that never happened, and used his legal connections to paint me as an unfit mother. When he threatened to have me institutionalized, something his family money and influence could have accomplished, I made the most painful decision of my life. I agreed to limited visitation in exchange for my children's safety and the freedom to watch over them from a distance. For years, I lived in a small apartment 20 minutes from the home we had shared. I worked as a library assistant, careful never to advance too far or draw attention, showing up for every visitation, sports game, and school event I was legally permitted to attend. All while Richard systematically turned my children against me. When they were old enough, he told them I had tried to kidnap them during the divorce, that I was unstable, that I didn't really love them. And they believed him. Of course they did. He was their father, their provider, their constant. I was just the difficult woman who appeared in their lives on designated weekends and holidays. In the journals, I explained all of this. Every painful detail. Not to hurt them, but because the truth, however painful, was the only real inheritance I could leave them. The second part of my plan required more strategic thinking. I had been quietly building a financial cushion over the years, nothing Richard knew about. Working extra jobs paid in cash, making small investments, living minimally. I had accumulated nearly $1.2 million. Not a fortune by Richard's standards, but enough for my purposes. With Janet's help, I established the Elaine Brenner Foundation for Domestic Violence Survivors. The foundation would receive my entire estate upon my death, the money, my modest home, everything. The board consisted of carefully selected domestic violence experts, advocates, and survivors. People who understood the complexity of abuse and its lasting impact. The final piece came together when I learned that Richard was planning the annual Christmas gathering at his lake house. All 3 children would be there, along with their spouses and my 5 grandchildren. I was not invited, of course. I never was. But this year, Richard wouldn't have the final say. I arranged for the journals to be delivered to each of my children on Christmas Eve, along with a letter explaining that I had weeks, not months, to live. I also included an invitation to meet at my home on Christmas Day, should they want answers beyond what the journals provided. What I didn't tell them was that I had also sent copies of my evidence to Richard's law firm partners, the Bar Association, and several of his high-profile clients. His carefully constructed image would crumble simultaneously with my children's illusions about him. 30 years of secrets exposed in a single day. Christmas Eve arrived. I sat in my living room, wondering if any of them would come tomorrow. The journals had been delivered hours ago. By now, they would be reading about the mother they never really knew. The truth they had never been allowed to see. My phone rang at 11:47 p.m. It was Sophia, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. "Mum," she choked out. "Is it true? All of it?" "Yes, sweetheart. All of it. Why didn't you tell us? All these years. Would you have believed me?" Her silence was my answer. "We are coming tomorrow," she finally said. "All of us. What about your father?" "The Christmas gathering." "Dad's not having Christmas this year," she said with a coldness I'd never heard from her. "Michael showed the partners what you sent. They called an emergency meeting. Rebecca walked out when he denied everything." I closed my eyes, feeling decades of tension begin to unravel. "I'm sorry it had to be this way." "Don't be sorry, Mom. Be here tomorrow." When they arrived the next day, the atmosphere was heavy with grief and confusion. Rebecca looked shell-shocked, her usual confidence shattered. Michael was quiet, his eyes red from crying. Sophia immediately embraced me, holding on as though she might lose me again. We sat in my modest living room, the Christmas tree I hadn't expected anyone to see glittering in the corner. "Why now?" Rebecca finally asked, her voice strained. "Why tell us when you're dying?" "Because I couldn't leave knowing you might never understand. And because he can't hurt me anymore." "He hurt all of us," Michael said quietly. "By making us complicit in what happened to you." "You were never complicit," I said firmly. "You were victims too. Children who trusted the parent who was present." "I defended him," Rebecca whispered. "For years, I defended him to anyone who questioned his version of events. I became a lawyer because of him. I joined his firm. I've spent my entire adult life trying to make him proud." "You didn't know," I said. "I should have seen it," she insisted. "The inconsistencies. The way he'd get angry if we mentioned enjoying our time with you. The control." "We've been horrible to you," Sophia said, fresh tears spilling. I shook my head. "You were children caught in an impossible situation." We talked for hours. They asked questions, I answered honestly. They cried, I held them as best I could with my weakening body. They raged, I let them. It was Christmas Day, and for the first time in decades, I was truly with my children. As evening approached, I explained the foundation I had created. "So none of us will inherit anything?" Michael asked, not accusingly but curiously. "You'll inherit the truth," I said. "And the freedom that comes with it. The foundation will help women and children who are where we once were." To my surprise, Rebecca nodded. "It's perfect," she said. "And I want to help. I'm leaving the firm. I can offer legal services to the foundation. I can manage the finances," Michael added. And I can develop educational programs, Sophia said. I looked at my children, really looked at them, and saw not the damaged, distant adults who had entered my home that morning, but the people they might become now that they were free from Richard's lies. Before they left that evening, Rebecca handed me an envelope. Inside was a legal document, Richard's resignation from the firm, effective immediately, and a statement admitting to personal misconduct without specifics. There was also a note from his partners expressing their profound apologies for their association with him and a generous donation to my foundation. He's finished, Rebecca said without emotion. The partners are buying him out for a fraction of what he's worth to avoid a scandal. His reputation is destroyed. That wasn't why I did this, I told her. I know, she said. But it's justice all the same. They returned the next day. And the next. For the remaining weeks of my life, my children were truly with me. We talked about everything I had missed, first loves, heartbreaks, dreams, fears. They brought my grandchildren, who climbed onto my bed and let me read them stories. We created more memories in those few precious weeks than we had in decades. Richard tried to contact them once, sending a group text accusing me of manipulation and lies. Michael simply responded with a photo of my bruised body from a hospital report dated 25 years earlier. There were no more messages after that. As my strength waned, we made plans. Not just for the funeral, but for after. How they would work with the foundation. How they would support each other through the grief, not just of losing me, but of losing the father they thought they had. The night before I died, I added a final entry to my own private journal, the one my children would find later. I came into this world screaming and fighting, and for too many years, I stopped fighting because I thought silence would protect those I love. I was wrong. The truth, however painful, is the only protection that matters. I leave this world having finally won the only battle that ever truly mattered, the battle for my children's understanding. My body may be defeated, but my spirit leaves victorious. Richard took many things from me, but he could not take my final testimony. And in that testimony, I found my revenge, my redemption, and my peace. The next morning, I slipped away with my children holding my hands. My last thought was not of Richard or the pain he caused, but of the 3 beautiful souls who came from our broken union. Souls that were finally truly free. 2 weeks after my funeral, the Elaine Brenner Foundation for Domestic Violence Survivors opened its doors. My children stood together at the ribbon cutting, their faces solemn but determined. The plaque by the entrance bears a simple inscription beneath my name. Her final testimony was not of her suffering, but of her strength. May all who enter here find the same. Richard died alone 3 years later, his reputation and legacy in tatters. No one attended his funeral except a paid minister and the cemetery workers. But my legacy lives on, not just in the foundation that bears my name, but in my children who now understand that the most difficult person they knew was actually the strongest. And in that understanding, they found their own strength. The truth was my revenge, and it was complete.